What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Oak Tree Football channel, and in today's video, I'm going to be doing something a little different. I'm going to be making my power rankings for the SEC football conference this year. I recently finished doing all of my predictions, my team predictions for the SEC. I did every team, so basically how it's going to work from now on, once I finish all my predictions for the Big Ten schools, I'm going to do my Big Ten power rankings, and same with the rest of the conferences. So today I will be doing the SEC. The SEC is considered by most to be the best conference in college football. Some consider it to be the Big Ten, which is also a very good conference, but the SEC, in my opinion, is the best conference. It's just so competitive every year. There's so many good teams, and I just think it's better than the Big Ten, but yeah, I just think it's a great conference. Last year, of course, the national champions, LSU Tigers, were in the SEC. So maybe we'll see another SEC national champion this year. There's a lot of talent in the SEC this season. So let's just get right into this power ranking. Starting at number 14, I have Vanderbilt. I just don't think Vanderbilt is that good of a team. They're just losing. I don't think they're terrible, really, though. They just don't have. They're just not as good as the rest of the SEC teams. Deuce Wallace, their quarterback, decided to leave the program, which leaves a quarterback battle for them, and it will most likely be won. They will most likely have a freshman starting at quarterback this season. They also lost arguably their best player, Keyshawn Vaughn, who was taken in the third round of the NFL draft. They lost tight end Jared Pinkney. Their defense is okay, though, I do think, as they were able to bring back some good players like Dio Odeyingbo and Ty Dolly and Dimitri Moore. But they had the worst recruiting class in the SEC. They weren't that good last year. I don't think there's a very bright future for their head coach, Derek Mason, who could be fired after the season, honestly. Vanderbilt only won 3 games this year, and it'll probably be more of the same, in my opinion, this year. Probably somewhere between 1 and 4 wins. So I just don't expect it to be a good season for Vanderbilt, which is why I have them at number 14. Moving on to number 13, I have the Arkansas Razorbacks. I do think Arkansas improved this offseason because they really didn't lose all too much, and they were able to bring in former Florida quarterback Felipe Franks, but they still just aren't that good of an SEC team. Rakeem Boyd, the running back, is one of the better SEC running backs, in my opinion, though, which is huge for them. But other than that, there are still a lot of holes on that team. They had the worst record in the SEC last year with 2-10, and they'll probably be towards the bottom once again. Their recruiting class wasn't terrible, and I think there could be a future for Arkansas. I just don't see anything happening this year. So I have them at 13th. I could even put them at 14th. It was really between Vanderbilt and Arkansas for that last spot. I decided to go with Vanderbilt. I think you could say Arkansas is the worst team in the SEC, though. Moving on to number 12, where I have the Missouri Tigers. I do not think Missouri is a bad team. I just want to say that. I think Missouri is a pretty good team, honestly. Pretty underrated, but there's just so many good teams in the SEC that it's hard to put them higher than this. Like I said, I do not think Missouri's that terrible, and I think they will be competing for a bowl game this year. I just don't think they're as good as the teams above them. They had the 50th best recruiting class in the country, which isn't great by SEC standards. It's fine, but it could be better, definitely. Tyler Powell, is their quarterback. He will most likely play quarterback for them this season. I think he'll struggle since he has no starting experience. They didn't lose too much else, though, other than Albert Akue-Bunum. And they are bringing in a new head coach in Elijah Drinkwitz, who led Appalachian State to a 12-1 record last year, if I'm remembering correctly. They could be a pretty good team, but I think there are definitely some holes that need to be filled before Mizzou can be a serious contender in the SEC and just in college football as a whole. Moving on to number 11, I have the South Carolina Gamecocks. I'm pretty high on the Gamecocks this year, and I was actually considering putting them even higher, and I actually originally did have them at number 10. They are losing some talent like Javon Kinlaw and Brian Edwards, but they're bringing back some really good talent, I think. They had the 18th best recruiting class in the country, which is huge for them. Quarterback Jake Bentley transferred to Utah, so now Ryan Helinski will be the starter. He was the starter for most of last year, but I think he can have a better year this season. I think we can see a pretty good quarterback play this year, especially with a new offensive coordinator, Mike Bobo. I think South Carolina has a pretty talented roster, but for me, I think the problem is head coach Will Muschamp. He really hasn't shown any reason he should be a head coach other than last year's win against Georgia. Muschamp is a defensive-minded coach, so maybe the hiring of Bobo will let him focus more on what he does best. But either way, the clock is ticking on Muschamp, and he could be fired if South Carolina doesn't have a great year. I think it'll be somewhere between 5 and 6 wins, maybe 7. But I think we could see them in a bowl game at the end of the season. Moving on to number 10, I have Mississippi State. Some people may think the Bulldogs should be a bit higher than what I have them at, and even though I do have them a bit low, I think Mississippi State, is a very, very good team. They had a great offseason. They brought in head coach Mike Leach and a new quarterback in KJ Costello, and along with that, they were able to bring in the 28th best recruiting class in the country. They did lose some important talent on their defense, like Willie Gay Jr. and Cameron Dantzler, but on the offensive side of the ball, they're bringing back almost everything, including Kylan Hill, who had over 1,300 rush yards last year. He might not get as many carries this year, probably because of Mike Leach's air raid offensive system, but he will be someone that they can rely on when they really need to. KJ Costello will probably fit well in Mike Leach's air raid system. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks for that. He fits very, very well in that system. They will probably struggle a bit, though, due to the lack of practices. I still think there's a good future for Mississippi State, especially with Mike Leach at the helm. And I do think they will be pretty good this year. But I don't think they'll be anything special. I think they'll be pretty good, just nothing special. So probably around 6-6, in my opinion, this year. Moving on to number 9, and at number 9, I have Ole Miss. Similar to South Carolina, I am very high on Ole Miss. I'm actually very high on Ole Miss this season, like I just said. Probably higher than a lot of people. I definitely think they can be a good team. They didn't lose too much talent. They had a pretty good recruiting class. For the most part, Matt Corral was their starting quarterback last year. But I think this year will be John Rice Plumlee because of his ability to both run and pass the ball. He had over 1,000 rush yards in short playing time last year, and he can definitely grow as a passer, in my opinion. They also have receiver Elijah Moore coming back. He led them in both receiving yards and touchdowns last year. They recently hired Lane Kiffin to be their head coach, and he has been a good coach in the past. So I don't know if he'll be great this year, but definitely in the future he can be a very good coach. I think the Rebels have the talent to make a bowl this year. I just think they need to put the pieces together, and I do think they will. I think they will be able to put the pieces together. I really, really like Ole Miss this year. I was really considering, for this 9th spot, it was really between Mississippi State and Ole Miss. I went with Ole Miss, but you can definitely put Mississippi State in number 9. Moving on to the top 8. Now, the top 8 are teams I think are very good this year, so it was hard for me to rank them from 8 to 1, but currently in number 8, I have the Kentucky Wildcats. I have the Kentucky Wildcats at number 8, which may seem a bit low, but I really, really think Kentucky's a very good team. There's just so many other good teams in the SEC. You can make an argument that they should be number 7, but I really don't think they should be much higher than that. They are losing one of their top offensive playmakers in Lynn Bowden, but quarterback Terry Wilson's coming back after missing last season due to injury. Kentucky's bringing back some good talent as well, which helps, but they're also bringing in the 25th best recruiting class in the country. I'm not sure how Wilson will play because he missed the entirety of last season, and he wasn't all that great 2 years ago, but I think he'll be a fine quarterback. They have a pretty good defense, and they definitely have the pieces on offense to be a pretty good team this year. So, I mean, maybe you can put Kentucky a few spots higher, but I think this is a pretty good spot for Kentucky. Like I said, this may seem low. It's just hard to put them higher with how many good teams there are in the SEC. So I have them at number 8 for now. Moving on to number 7, I have the Tennessee Volunteers. I don't necessarily think Tennessee is in the top tier of SEC football, but they are probably the closest in my opinion. Well, maybe not the closest. There are a few other teams that I think are very close as well, but they are 100% a great, great team in my opinion. They should be very good. They were not great at the start of last season, but they completely turned around at mid-season, and I expect them to keep that momentum going into this year. I think they'll have around an 8-win season this year. I think Jerry Guarantano can be a pretty good quarterback, and Ty Chandler can be a solid running back. They are losing some talent, but I don't think it's too much. And they had a top 10 recruiting class in the country, so that's good for them. And I think that's a great future for the Volunteers, and I expect it to be a pretty good year for them. Like I said, like I've already talked about, it's just hard to put them higher with how many good teams there are in the SEC. Moving on to number 6, where I have Texas A&M, the Texas A&M Aggies. I think it's possible Texas A&M plays even better than where I currently have them ranked this season because they have more experience than most teams in the SEC, especially at the quarterback position. I believe Kellen Mond is the most experienced quarterback in the SEC, which is going to be huge for Texas A&M's chances. They had the 6th best recruiting class in the country, and they're returning a lot of talent from last year. Personally, I think Kellen Mond will play pretty well this year, and I think it's possible Isaiah Spiller has over 1,000 rush yards last year. He just missed this season. I think he can have 1,000 rush yards this year. He just missed last year. He was very close, and potentially even another 1,000-yard receiving season, which he had last year. I think their defense could improve a bit, but I think Texas A&M has the talent to be a pretty good team this year. I really, really like Texas A&M. I feel some people are overrating them a bit, but I don't think that you can take away that they are a very good team and should be pretty good this year. Moving on to number 5, where I have the Auburn Tigers. I expect a pretty good season from Auburn, actually. I think Bo Nix will have a huge step up from where he was last year. Jatarvius Whitlow can be a good running back, and Seth Williams can be a very good wide receiver. So 3 pieces on their offense that are very good right there. And then they have some good talent on their defense as well. So this is a team that really has a lot of good pieces, and if they can put the pieces together, they can be a very, very good team this year. They are losing some good talent such as Derrick Brown, but they're bringing in a very good recruiting class. I don't think Auburn is as good as some teams above them, but I really feel they could be a surprise team this year and give some people a big surprise and maybe get a big upset against someone that's I currently have ranked higher than them. So I just think Auburn is a great team, really high on them this year. But like I've talked about, it's hard to rank them higher than this. Moving on to number 4, where I have last year's college football champions, the LSU Tigers. The Tigers were obviously unbelievable last season. They had so much talent, one of the best seasons we've ever seen in college football history. And even though they are losing so much talent, they're bringing a lot back and bringing in some players that can replace the ones they lost. It's just hard placing them in first, second, or third because there's so many other good teams there. It's going to be interesting to see how Miles Brennan plays, but the running game should be pretty good in my opinion. In my opinion, they also have the best wide receiver in college football, which is Jamar Chase. They have a pretty good offensive line, and they have some really good pieces on their defense, including Derek Stingley Jr., who I think is the best cornerback in college football. They're losing a lot of important coaches, but are bringing back head coach Ed Orgeron. It should be great again this year. LSU has the pieces to win double-digit games, in my opinion, but in a tough SEC, I have them ranked number 4. Moving on to number 3, where I have the Florida Gators. Personally, I do feel Florida is being a bit overrated by some people, but I still think the Gators are a really good team. They had a pretty good recruiting class and really aren't losing too much other than C.J. Henderson and a few others. They definitely are losing some talent, but C.J. Henderson was the most important loss, and the other losses are going to hurt, but they're not as important as C.J. Henderson is, in my opinion. Kyle Trask will definitely improve, in my opinion, and he could even be the best quarterback in the SEC. Kyle Pitts is arguably the best tight end in college football. Their running game probably won't be great, but their defense, they are getting back Donovan Stinner, who led the team with 4 interceptions last year, I believe. Florida has a lot of talent, and they should be a great team this year. In my opinion, though, there are 2 teams better than them. They should have a fantastic year. I currently have them with an 11-1 record. I just think they have the talent to do it. And the only team I have beating them currently is the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, I was really considering putting Georgia at 1. But I did end up putting them at number 2 because I feel like the safer bet. I feel like they are not the most talented team in the SEC, but I think they will be the best. So I think they'll have the best season of all SEC teams. I have them in the playoff. They could be close to they could just miss the playoff, but they're the team I have in the playoff for the SEC. Obviously, there could be more SEC teams in the playoffs, but I put Georgia as the only one. I don't think they're the most talented team, like I said, in the SEC, but I think they're very talented, and I think they'll have a great year. I think they'll go undefeated. There's so much talent. Their recruiting class was the best in college football, and they're bringing in some great talent. They did lose Jake Fromm, quarterback Jake Fromm, but they're bringing in Jamie Newman, who I personally think can be even better. They are losing running back DeAndre Swift, but they still have some good players who can fill in for him. I also expect George Pickens to have a big year. And then there's their defense. Their defense is just probably the best in college football. In my opinion, it is the best. I mean, maybe you can argue that there are a few more that are better than them, but their defense is just so good. They're bringing back Monty Rice, Azeez Ojulari, Richard LeCounte, and many more. Georgia should be a great team this year, and I think we will, without a doubt, see them playing in a New Year's Six Bowl, whether that be just a bowl game or the college football playoff. So I expect Georgia to be a great team this year, but I don't think their team is as talented as the Alabama Crimson Tide. The Crimson Tide's team is just so talented. They have a great coach. Everything is going to be perfect for them. Like we talked about earlier, I think Georgia will be the best team in the SEC this year, but I think that Alabama has the best roster. It's just such a talented team. If Mac Jones plays quarterback, which is not sure yet, but if he does, I think he can be pretty solid. And Najee Harris is, in my opinion, the best running back in not in the SEC. I think they have the best receiving core with Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith, and their offensive line is one of the better in the conference. Even though the defense still isn't as good as Georgia's, it still is incredibly talented with the likes of Patrick Surtain Jr. and many others. So they also had a fantastic recruiting class, I believe, second to only Georgia. They also have a great coach in Nick Saban, so it should be another great year for Alabama. They're always good, even though they lost Tua last year. They were still a pretty good team for the most part, and they should be a very good team this year. Personally, I don't have them in the playoffs, but I think they'll be very close, and I would not be surprised if they go to the playoff. I was considering putting Bama at 2, but I just think the roster is too good, so I did end up going with them at number 1. But that is my SEC power rankings for this year. What is your SEC power rankings? Tell me in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like. And if you are new around here, feel free to subscribe for more daily NFL and college football content. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next video.